We haven't had a chance to talk to you since the thing about Conor McGregor came down. Any reaction that you have since the conviction in the civil court and the penalties he faced?
What do you mean? What's my reaction?
Do you have any comment about what his?
If I had a comment, I would have put it out already.
What about his status with the UFC?
He hasn't been fighting here in I don't know how long.
But there's been, you announced him at 303. There's been talk he's going to fight.
Right.
I mean, does that impact him in any way, or?
Well, if he does fight, it'll be sometime next year.
All right, let's pause here. UFC President Dana White. Take a look at this man. All right. He is a politician. Let's be clear. He knows how to answer certain questions and how to squirm out of others. This was a fair question from a reporter, which almost feels rare at this point in the UFC media press room. And it was on arguably the sport's biggest star ever, if not one of the top names ever, Conor McGregor. Ben Fawkes of Yahoo Sports would have a spot-on tweet above the video. Amazing to pretend to be confused as to why anyone would possibly think you might have a comment about your biggest star being an adjudicated R-word. It would take Dana White and the UFC over 10 days, I believe 15 days to be exact, to comment on McGregor and this.
A woman in Ireland says McGregor and another man raped her in a penthouse suite years ago, and when criminal charges went nowhere, she took her fight to civil court.
What do you think?
What do you have to say? Say sorry for what has happened?
Conor McGregor's late-night party antics were laid bare in civil court before a jury found he did assault a woman. The civil trial heard how the UFC superstar, who was found liable to have assaulted Nikita Hand at a Dublin hotel in December 2018, indulged in parties, boozy nightclub binges, and drug use.
UFC fighter Conor McGregor has been found guilty of assault by a high court in Dublin, Ireland.
Do you have any reaction to the women at the centre? Do you have a reaction? Do you have an apology to the women at the centre of this?
Lastly, I want to thank my daughter, Freya, who I'm most grateful for. She has given me so much strength and courage over the last 6 years throughout this nightmare to keep on pushing forward for justice. I want to show Freya and every other girl and boy that you can stand up for yourself if something happens to you, no matter who the person is, and justice will be served. To all the victims of sexual assault, I hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up, you have a voice, and keep on fighting for justice.
Luke Thomas would weigh in with a message that I completely agree with. The only check on anyone's behavior in this industry is worst case scenario capitalist pressure. Zero moral conscience or imperative. 1,000% yes. 1,000%. Because what we have here is a business model that is essentially saying we don't want morality. We don't want a social conscience. What we want is for everyone to shut the hell up so we can get this bread. That is all that they are about. You really think they care anything about what Conor McGregor did? No. The only way that they would care is if the shareholders care. And they don't. They've proven they don't. They did at one point, surprisingly enough, when they weren't as big, when they were a smaller company. Thomas would follow that up with this. This is why stories of fighters or the UFC itself doing something cool or fun or even benevolent don't resonate with me anymore. It's absurd to ask the public to believe the UFC has no relationship to a fighter's misconduct, yet has everything to do with what makes them laudable. Uncrowned would have more in a must-read piece that we will leave in the description box below. There was an era when the UFC would certainly have terminated its professional relationship with a man adjudicated to have essayed a woman. Ask Miguel Torres, a 40-4 fighter in the year 2011, when he was fired from Dana White's roster for tweeting a joke about essay that he had heard on a sitcom. White would tell the four-letter network at the time, the fact he even thinks that's funny or that's a joke, it disturbs me. Yet you have the likes of Sean Strickland And you even have the conduct of Dana White himself getting off practically scot-free. This is the environment and the ecosystem that the UFC has set up, mainly with Dana White leading the way. From a media perspective, Trent Reinsmith would hit the nail on the head here, which goes to show how much of a failure the media has been with stuff like this. Uncrowned covered this with a staff byline, but at least they covered it. MMA Junkie, MMA Fighting, and ESPN have nothing on Dana White blowing off a question on Conor McGregor's SA trial, the UFC's first and only statement in over 2 weeks. MMA journalism, dead. I'll add on to that in just a moment. There's also McGregor's history. He struck an MMA official, a fan taking a picture with their cell phone, a 50-year-old who declined to drink his proper number 12 Irish whiskey, and thus he hit him. The presenter of the Italian version of X Factor, and even sent Bernie, the Miami Heat mascot, to the emergency room. Conor McGregor threw a punch at Machine Gun Kelly, he's not a rapper anymore, on the red carpet of the MTV VMA Awards. That was 4 years ago. He would toss an energy drink cans, across a crowded auditorium at Nate Diaz. I actually thought that was bottles of water, but of course, I can be wrong. There would be more. Everyone reading this will know what the dolly means and why a clearly shaken White called it the most disgusting incident in UFC history. Yeah, that was, I believe it was in New York City, where he was taking a dolly and he attacked his fellow fighters, and he would injure many of them who were on a bus, and it would be a disgusting moment. I believe White at the time even said it was disqualifying, and yet still, just like John Jones, they are welcomed back with open arms, because you know what? Money pays the bills, keeps the lights on, can reach billionaire status for Dana White, for the Fertittas. I mean, why would they care? It's all about the money, stupid. As is the quote, follow the money. They would add, we are kidding ourselves to expect the UFC to be put under any pressure from advertisers or broadcast partners to cut him. We found that out when he struck his wife twice in Cabo San Lucas at Squid Row, New Year's Eve, and nothing happened to him. Practically nothing happened to him. And yet one wonders how successful a McGregor fight could even be outside the UFC's best-in-class promotional machine. McGregor going up against Jake Paul would certainly melt Netflix's beleaguered servers. That is a fair point. But it'd be a one-off that would do little more than what the streaming giant's appetite for the kind of content that UFC delivers more of, and better than anyone else. I'll add this. I, as a member of the media who's been in press rooms for boxing, for baseball, for the NBA, I am deeply ashamed at what the UFC has enabled when it comes to the press. And I've gone over this before because it's just so pathetic. There was one reporter who was in there sucking up to Dana White, making sure he knew how much she absolutely loves him, and asking if a fighter would brand her, as in like how you do a cow. The amount of smooching that the MMA press does with Dana White, including one dude who is, you could say, one of the bigger names within MMA media who works for ESPN, the glossing is just next level. I understand that we are in a weird time when it comes to media. That is not media. That is public relations. It is no longer a press room. It is a public relations room, unless you have people that are going to fact check stuff that Dana says and ask some degree of hard-hitting questions. And this wasn't even a hard-hitting question. It was a question that is merited, in fact, that should be asked. Yet it's so clear that everyone is so scared of ruffling the feathers of Dana White. And we saw it with Ariel Helwani. Very few had his back. And then I see big names leaving MMA media and going to different sports, and I can kind of understand why. Not only do they have a monopoly essentially on the sport, in my opinion, they have a monopoly on MMA media. It's pathetic, but this is what they want. This is what Dana wants. It is a very Trumpian way to say, I will only allow, Right Side Broadcasting Network and Fox News and OAN to get a majority of my appearances. He made an appearance on NBC News, and I believe it was the first time in, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, something like that. Dana White says he doesn't want to be in politics anymore. He is in it. And it is just shameful what has happened, because we need less smooching of Dana, and we need more hard-hitting questions. We need more aerials. We need more Mark Ramondis. We need more that will stand up and at least try to be a little bit more objective. Because right now, this ain't it. If you can and are willing, please become a paid member here at TYT Sports. And or go to tyt.com/join. In addition, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Appreciate it. Have a great day.